The topic this week is cracking knuckles.
Ugh.
Yeah, a lot of people dislike it just as much, if not more than you do.
Yeah, it's a really interesting subject that seems to divide society straight down the center between those who hate watching anybody crack their knuckles and can't stand the sound, and there's also a pretty large group of people who can't stop doing it.
And everyone does it for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, like some people do it before typing or playing piano.
Or, I mean, because of boredom, or for intimidation. It's a classic pre-bullying warm-up.
Absolutely. I think what's also a really interesting aspect of it is that so many people think that they know what it actually does to you.
Everyone's absolutely sure of themselves when they talk about whether or not it's detrimental for you in the long run, or it's not going to affect you at all,
Exactly.
or it's good for you.
I had one teacher in elementary school. I was cracking my knuckles in the hallway. I guess it was out of boredom. And she walked up and grabbed my hands and told me to stop. And she flashed these fleshy knuckles in front of my face and said if I kept on doing it, I'll have knuckles like hers.
That's gross and ominous.
It was terribly gross. And what's funny is we also have this really large population of people who are unsure as to whether or not it's good or bad. And they tentatively go through life, cracking their knuckles, wondering if each crack is bringing them one step closer to living with arthritis later on in their life.
Yeah, and conversely, there's a group of people who do it with outright authority. I mean, as aforementioned, bullies. Before beating someone up. I mean, they do it absolutely sure themselves.
Exactly. So to help bullies out around the world and to get the answer to the question of whether or not cracking your knuckles is good for you and what it actually does to your body when you do it, we sought out the answers and help of Miss Hershey in a segment we like to call Ask Miss Hershey Stuff. Alright, so we are here in Miss Hershey's classroom with Sophomore Kiyomi Taylor. We're trying to get to the bottom of what really happens when you crack your knuckles.
I mean, yeah, we've all been told, that it's bad, and we've also been told that it's good for you. So, gonna see what really happens.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I am the knuckle cracking expert, I'm sure. It's not bad for you. In the long range, if you're a chronic knuckle cracker, you may have some problems in the future. But initially, when you're first doing it, it really doesn't harm you. Okay, now why do you hear that noise when you crack your knuckles? It's because at the end of the bones on the joints, there is a little covering at the end of the bones. It's called the bursa. And in between that covering and the cartilage at the end, there is a fluid in there, and that's called the synovial fluid. And the synovial fluid, although it doesn't look like you have synovial fluid in there, there is. The synovial fluid it's there to lubricate the joint and to make it so that it moves nicely. And sometimes gases will accumulate in there. Gases like carbon dioxide, nitrogen gas, and oxygen will accumulate in there. And that's okay. But when you crack your knuckles, what happens is you are usually stretching your knuckle or bending the joint, and you're expanding the space in that cavity. So what happens when you take a can of soda and you open the can of soda? What happens to that?
I mean, the gas escapes.
The gas escapes, right? Okay, so why does it escape? Because you've increased the volume of that. Okay, you've decreased the pressure by opening that thing. You've decreased the pressure. When volume increases, the pressure decreases. Now the pressure is keeping those bubbles in the soda. So when you open your soda and you're increasing the volume there, okay, you're decreasing the pressure and the gases are going to come out. So when you crack your knuckles, you're increasing the space in that little bursa area, that synovial fluid, and the gases in there are then going to escape. And that's what you hear when you hear the popping sound of cracking your knuckles.
Huh.
So that's what happens there.
Wow, so no. I mean, I've always known the myths of you get arthritis from cracking.
Yeah.
Actually, they've done research, and there is really no correlation between those people who get arthritis and cracking knuckles. But it's one of those urban myths that we keep on perpetuating. What happens when you crack your knuckles is you're loosening up, you're pulling the ligaments. Ligaments are things that connective tissue that holds the bones together. And so what you're doing is you are like pulling those and stretching those. And people who crack their knuckles say that their joints feel much better after they crack their knuckles. All right, some people crack their backs or their necks. All right, same kind of thing, because you're stretching the ligaments, so it seems to give a little bit more mobility. And sometimes piano players or violinists will do that, probably guitarists too, will do that to increase their mobility. And that's okay, and that's good. In the long run, they did a study, and people who were chronic knuckle crackers had 84% of them experienced hand swelling later in life. So that apparently that constant movement, I don't really know why it would cause hand swelling, but 84% had hand swelling later in life, and only 6% of the non-chronic knuckle crackers had swelling in their hands. So that seems to be the main problem over a long period of time, that you may have some hand swelling, and also loss of grip, that you don't have as tight a grip as you used to.
And is that from like a weakening of the muscles?
Probably a weakening of the muscles, and also weakening of the ligaments, so that the bones aren't held as tightly together, and probably the tendons on the ends of the muscles also.
Great. So there it is. I mean, there is some validity to what my 5th grade teacher warned me about. Your knuckles will get larger. And again, thank you for answering it.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. It was my pleasure to speak with both of you.
Great. Thanks a lot. So all
the way to Ohio, all the way to
I'm Evan Walter.
And I'm Caleb Williams.
And we are the founders of the CHS Radio project.
If you like the program today and want to get involved or donate, check us out at thechsradio.com.